It's not very often that you bump into superstars. Some are usually known to you by name and some just by face. But you do, or you might not remember a name of a man called Kempes. Now, this was an Argentine player who had scored 116 goals in his career, had been twice La Liga top scorer, an Argentine player, and who was very famous in that day. Now, to be named after a famous player was a very, very big thing as well, especially in the 80s where all the soccer players had nicknames. So you might know the name Sammy Owino Kempes. Now, if you don't, well then, we bring him to you now. And he's right here beside me, Sammy Owino Kempes. It's very good to see you. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing well. Thank you for inviting me. I'm very honored.
People talk a lot about you. I mean, especially the people of those generations. How did you acquire the name Kempes, first of all?
You know, I used to play for Gormaya and Harambee Stars. And in '78, when I was first invited to the national team, Argentina was obviously playing in the World Cup.
It was one of the best teams at that time.
Exactly. And so they won the World Cup in '78. And as you stated, there was a player called Kempes who was the top scorer of that team.
Mario Kempes.
Exactly. And just like all Gormaya players, I think the club, the fans saw it fitting to call me Kempes. I had no choice.
Did you score goals? He scored 116 goals at that time. Was it because of your goals prowess, or what was it because?
You know, I've always wondered about that because the reality is he was a pure goal scorer while I was a playmaker.
Right.
Some things don't make sense, but it is what it is. So
it is what it is, and that name has stuck, and Kempes is what we remember. So the generation probably behind us might not know the name Kempes, but the people who lived and watched football in the 80s know the name Kempes, and they know Sammy Owino, and your prowess in Gormaya together with all the other players who had nicknames all along. John, Bobby, Ogola, everybody had a nickname those days. But the Gormaya that you had that time and the soccer that you played that time, if you compare it to what we are playing at the moment, because I have a feeling you've watched a few matches in Kenya, what would you say is the difference that time and now?
I think the biggest difference was, and it wasn't just with Gormaya, but it was just, I mean, soccer in general. It was very localized, and there were not many local players that went and played overseas. So the best players still played locally, okay. And I think that made a big difference. So there was not much interest in overseas football, and so a lot of the support was focused internally.
Just internally, and so the good players remained internally, and so we had very good competition internally. Who in your mind could you say were some of the best players of your time from any club that you can remember?
You know, the person that I molded myself after was Alan Thigo.
The Gormaya midfielder.
The Gormaya midfielder. He was also somebody that gave me a lot of support. I learned from him when I joined Gormaya. He was somebody I looked up to, and he gave me the opportunity to actually play ahead of him when he was a very big star. So I would say he was one player that I really looked up to.
And those who gave you competition, because those days Abaluya FC, now AFC Leopards, and Luo Union, Reunion, Gormaya were all very big rivals. You know, who on the other side would you be notably, stating as a good player?
You know, there are very many good players. Mulamba is an example of a player that I thought was good. Masiga was a good player. I'm talking about on the AFC side. But to be honest with you, there were so many good players that I can remember. But the one player I always talk about is one that was never known, was played for Makshida. His name was Makshida. I don't know if you remember him. And the reason I didn't like him was he always followed me. It didn't matter what was going on. So he's one that sticks in my mind. He man-marked me. Okay. If I went to the sideline, he didn't care about the ball.
So he brought you a lot of shida in that
Yeah,
time.
he did.
Listen, Sammy, people talk about you with a lot of nostalgia, and positive nostalgia for that matter. And they also tout you as one of the success stories of football. When you migrated to the US, was it on a football platform or was it on a totally different platform?
Yeah, when in football, I was... I always knew that my career was going to end. And, even when I was extremely young, I always kind of started to think about what I was going to do after football. Because football is, at the most you play, if you play 12 years, you've played a lot. And so I was always focused on what I was going to do beyond my playing career. And so education was always something that I thought was very important. as you remember, when I was, those days, there was only one university in the whole country.
The university?
The university,
Of
Nairobi.
Nairobi.
Yes, and it was very difficult to
it was competitive,
to get
to
entry.
get in there, yes.
Exactly, especially for somebody who wanted to do engineering, because I went to Nairobi Technical, and that's what I wanted to do. So when the opportunity to go when the opportunity to go to the US came on a soccer scholarship, I jumped at it.
So you went on a soccer scholarship
Exactly.
to play for a university?
Yes, because we were the first. I would say, I think we were the first Kenyans to go to the US on a soccer scholarship. So I'm glad to say we opened up doors for other Kenyans to come through that pipeline.
You did. So you studied your engineering, probably started working in the US as well?
Yes.
But many people, when they talk about you, they talk about you having made it big in terms of soccer in the US. How do you relate this?
You know, it's like everything else in life. You know, I had my struggles when I was there. I think sometimes people underestimate how difficult it is to make it in the US. But we go through a lot to get to where you are. But when I finished my education, I worked as an engineer. Actually, after playing soccer in the US, I graduated and deviated from the game for a while, and then ended up working. And then years later, obviously, soccer has always been my first love. I got to a place in my life where I was able to establish myself. And then when my oldest son, started to play soccer again, I started looking at the opportunities that were out there for him, and that's how I ended up back in soccer again.
Okay.
Yeah.
And people will call it soccer. Yeah, I know why you're making the distinction, because when you're in the US, there's a difference
Exactly.
between football and soccer. But now they're saying you've established academies, not just academy, not one, but academies in the US, and everybody's looking at you as the model person who can be able to help even the young Kenyans into academies. What is it exactly you have done in the US, and why is it getting so much positive reaction?
You know, US is a really big country compared to Kenya, and North Texas is one of the two hotbeds of football in the United States. I'll call it football because we go both ways.
Okay.
But
All right.
it's one of the hotbeds of football in the country, together with Southern California. So I've been involved in football in North Texas for a long time. Like I said, I started with building a team for my son, and then it's grown completely. But I've been involved in just development of football in general in North Texas. And you know, when we actually started, football was not that big in the US.
It's nascent. It's just developing now.
Exactly.
It's
grown rapidly, and they've built the infrastructure, and I've been involved in North Texas in helping develop football there. So it's not just the academy. My vision of the academy had always been...
So you have an academy in the US?
Yes.
What is it called, and what does it do?
It's called ACES, Advanced Youth Soccer Educational System. And we have, like I said, my vision for the academy was never just to build an academy.
So you pick young players and put them in the academy, develop them?
Yes.
And then
yes.
Release them out to soccer clubs, I presume.
Exactly. Some of them go to college and on a scholarship. Some of them go to Europe, and some of them go to club in the United.
But the credit goes to, did you call it ACES?
AYSES.
ACES. Okay, so
Yeah.
the credit obviously goes to ACES for development of this players.
Exactly.
And that's what a lot of people try to do as well here. Now, when you came into Kenya and you've seen what we call academies, what is your comparison?
You know, even in the US, there are academies that are not real academies. So there's different levels of academy. I think for me, the academy means not just having a team, but it means the whole infrastructure of, the facilities and the development infrastructure as well. And so to me, it's not just having one or two teams. It's having all the necessary things that are necessary to develop a player and turn him into and prepare them for the next level.
And that takes a lot. I mean, it's not just the skills on the field. I mean, an academy should probably be, wholesome.
Exactly.
Different aspects of the game, the mental aspect of it, the nutritional aspect and all that. Is it considered in your academy?
Exactly. We do all that, yes.
All right. Okay. We are seeing now more than ever before a good number of players who you can refer to as Kenyans. Like your son, he is in America, but he's a Kenyan American and has the choice, if he's not yet a senior or has not played for a senior team, to play for Kenya if you'd like to. And we're seeing a lot more players like that around the world.
Yes.
Do you think this is what it will take to take a country like Kenya to successful levels at football, at the international level, at the national team level?
You know, I've been around here for a long time. I come and go, and I've had the opportunity to look at Kenyan football. I honestly believe the way to do it is to develop players locally. And to establish an academy infrastructure in Kenya, and then use that to develop top level players. And that entails creating a coaching infrastructure, a scouting infrastructure, and an infrastructure just goes beyond all parts of the country, not just the major cities. And so I honestly believe that because building anything that is good takes a while.
Time, yes.
Yeah.
You played at a time when you were playing what you would call raw soccer. I mean, you didn't go to anybody's academy, but obviously soccer, just like other sports, has also evolved. I mean, you've got to play a little bit technically now. You've got to play a little bit intelligently now. Where are we going wrong as Africa? I'll give you my train of thought. Young RFC in Tanzania are in the finals of the Confederations Cup. But you see, in Tanzania, they can allow 9, 10 foreign players at the club level. In Kenya, we allow only 5, and only 3 can be on the field at the same time. So we are faced with this situation where you want to prosper, but you also have to develop local talent. So you have, a limited number of foreigners in your teams. Which way is the right way to be able to develop? Because we've got problems at both levels.
I always say you can, just a correction, when I was playing, and I think that's part of what I modeled when I was in the US, there was an academy called Olympic Youth Centers.
Yes.
And that was part of why I think Kenya did very well when we matured into national team level, because we had the academy that helped us, developed us.
At that time.
Exactly,
yes.
and build that. So there's always that to go by and see how well we did. My thinking has always been, and you can actually look at England, for example, as a model. My thinking has always been is that you can create an artificial barrier to anything in life, but that doesn't really enable you to be better. For example, if you limit, I go back to the 2 questions, which one's best? I always think that if you want to be the best, you have to compete against the best. And I think I remember the EPL years ago when they were, not good, and it was very difficult to watch because they limited the number of foreign players, and they have become what they are because they have. This was done legally.
The best.
Exactly, they brought in the best, and then what happened to the English players was that the English players initially did not have a good opportunity to play. Of course, there are restrictions, but what has happened is over time, it has forced England to develop its own players.
Correct.
And now, if you look at the level of talent that England has, it's very promising now. Okay. And so I just think that the more open it is, the better off it is.
Right. One of the other problems is we are having probably in Kenya is, this is my own phrasing, is that we have a crisis in leadership, and especially of the sports federations. I think we have a crisis in the administrative aspects of the game as well. How deep do you think that affects the problem of standards of soccer in a country when you have that kind of problem?
I think it's everything, honestly. I think the whole thing starts from the top. If the leadership at the top is good, then everything kind of flows from there. I think one of the things we've had, we can go back to the days I used to play. I think all over the world, or in most places around the world where football is successful, people who run football are people who have experience in football. I'm not saying that should always be the case, but you need to have
Well, sometimes
football
you can have
people.
a chief executive who's
Yeah.
not necessarily a footballer, but who knows the aspect of business. But you must achieve the business level of football first. I think the English Premier League has now a CEO who's not really related to football, but who just has the business acumen because it's already reached that level. How do we get our football to the business level? Is probably the problem and what we should be tackling.
Yes, and that's the point I made. I say they don't have to, but it makes sense that if they are, because I always say there's business which I have done. I've not just done football business. I've owned a professional football team. I've had my own software businesses, and I know the difference between the regular non-football business and football business. But there's something to be said about the football business as a whole. And I agree with you. You can have a CEO who is able to allow people who is able to understand the concept of bringing in the right people and putting the right people in place. But I say this, I still think that even with a good CEO, you have a better chance of success if you have people who actually understand the game and include people who have actually played the game in the decision-making process.
Okay, so that means you must get rid of negative politics. I mean, or even just the political aspect of it should be very minimal.
Exactly.
And have the business aspect at a bigger level. The clubs in Kenya, most recently, the clubs have been told they will have no money for the winners of the Premier League. Now, I don't even want to make a comparison between how much Manchester City is getting in terms of millions of pounds. That's a different business altogether. But how demotivating is it when you don't have the money to give clubs? For you as a former player, how would that news hit you?
Yeah, it's very discouraging, and it's not just it just goes beyond that. It's just that the federation just doesn't have money. Period.
They just don't have money.
Yeah, and so it's not just the award money. It's just don't have money to do the things that they need to do. And I think it comes back to what we say. Mismanagement and there's lack of trust where corporations are not willing to give money to Football Kenya Federation. The government is reluctant, So it's a big issue. And so if there's a lack of trust, then we suffer because everything, to be honest with you, in today's world, everything starts with money. We can talk about all the things we need to do, but it all starts with money, and so I just feel like it's a lack of money, which is a function.
The bigger problem. Okay, yeah. So all the other problems emanate from the fact that there is no money. Yeah. When you come into the country, there's always an air of expectation, an air of happiness. Are you the savior that the Kenyan football is waiting for? Let me put it the other way around. What would you advise Kenyan football or give to Kenyan football to rise them from where they are?
I think I have something that is unique, and I'm not just saying this to boast in a boastful way, but I think I have a combination of being a business person and having played the game and having been involved in management of the game to the level that it's hard to find. So I have the experience of not just building an academy, I build infrastructures. I have facilities that are huge. You're not going to find any facility of the one that I have.
That has been put because the money was available. So are you saying you're bringing your money to be able to build infrastructure?
No. The whole idea in my opinion, if you want to build a successful, any business for that matter, like the way I look at it, we have to come in and create an entity, in this particular, for lack of better word, that is going to attract investors and where people want to be part of it. And my goal
want to get something out of the money they put in. So
exactly.
To create that kind of infrastructure.
Exactly. And so my feeling is that if you do that, people will want to give money. I'm confident that with my experience that we could do that.
Right, Sammy, thank you very much for all this. This is a very good insight. I just want to ask you one other question, and it could be a yes or no question or a maybe question.
Yes.
It's being said in hushed tones, but are you going to run for office in the Football Federation in Kenya?
My intention is to run.
Your intention is to run?
Yes.
Okay. And you're making that pretty obvious?
Yes.
So are you here to campaign? Are you here to meet people? The delegate system, do you think it will work for you or for everybody else?
You know, the system is what it is. I think the biggest challenge we're going to run into is, can we run a non-corrupt election?
Okay.
That's our biggest challenge.
Thank you very much, Sammy. And thank you very much for having
No,
us
you're
with
welcome.
your
You're welcome.
presence
Thank you.
here.
It's been
Sammy
my
Owino
pleasure.
Kempes, Gor Mahia legend. He said he's not a legend. No, legendary is something that is bequeathed to you. You don't refuse it. You don't accept it. We just give it to you. So here, just to tell us about his experiences out abroad in the US and also in his playing days and also here in Kenya. So we hope that he will be one of the people providing solutions for the problems that Kenya is facing at the moment. Well, we're going to go now. Thank you very much for having kept us company. We'll talk to you again next week on another edition of Scoreboard.